Hi from the Philippines. My name is Apple, one of the founders and teachers of Customized English Learning. We are an online platform to help you with your IELTS test in the future. It is a good chance for you to learn English today while staying at home amidst this pandemic. This time, I'm going to teach you all about IELTS speaking. As we all know, IELTS means International English Language Testing System is a kind of examination that tests your English capability and English skills. IELTS is basically an examination needed for you to take if you wish to go abroad to study or to work. There are 4 skills in IELTS: listening, reading, writing, and speaking. This time, we will focus all about IELTS speaking. IELTS speaking is basically the easiest among the 4. You may ask why. IELTS listening is actually 30 to 40 minutes. IELTS reading is good for 1 hour. IELTS writing is also good for 1 hour. But IELTS speaking is just around 11 to 14 minutes. Easy in a sense that it is the shortest skill to be tested. However, some might think it is a bit challenging or perhaps difficult. I hope I can help you with your confusions today about IELTS speaking, and I hope at the end of this podcast, you can learn to gain confidence and say to yourself, IELTS speaking is actually easy. Now let's start with the parts of an IELTS speaking. IELTS speaking has 3 parts. We call them parts 1, 2, and 3. Part 1 is basically the easiest among the 3. Well, trust me when I say easy, it's because the questions are all about you. Part 1 is basically called introduction. So from that word alone, you can already know what kind of questions would perhaps come out in the examination. Questions like, what is your name? Where do you come from? Are you working or are you studying? What is your favorite color? What is your favorite number? Do you like reading books or do you like to read magazines? Those are the common questions you will meet in IELTS Part 1 speaking. What do you think are the common among those questions? Yes, the word you. In every question in IELTS speaking part 1, there is always a you in it. It means the answers would be very easy since it's all about you. Commonly when you meet someone, they would ask you this question, what is your name? And you would answer right away, my name is Apple. And then that someone would ask you another question, a follow-up question. Where do you come from? And perhaps you would answer, I come from the Philippines. Well, technically speaking, the answer is correct. Yes, because I am Apple and I come from the Philippines. But in IELTS speaking, that is not enough. You need to provide a reason or a description just to make your answer longer. Why? IELTS speaking is testing your capability in speaking. It tests your vocabulary, your pronunciation, your grammatical range and accuracy, and also your fluency. Remember, you are paying someone to ask questions to you to check your English skills. You have to give your best. You have to show to the examiner that even if you're Vietnamese or perhaps Korean or Japanese and English is not your first language, you can still communicate in that language. It's like telling the examiner that, hey, I may be Vietnamese or Korean or Japanese, but I can speak English and I can communicate to you. So you might wonder, how can I answer part 1 questions that examiners wanted to hear? Well, let me give you this tip. There is a pattern actually for IELTS speaking part 1, and that is answer plus reason. If the question goes like this, what is your favorite number? You should answer it this way. My favorite number is 100. The reason why I love the number 100 is because I want to have a perfect score in my examination. You see, here in the Philippines, 100 is the highest mark in every examination at school. And I am a very competitive person and I always wanted to be on top in the class, so I always aim for 100. Now that is better than saying, my favorite number is 100. It is better in a way that the examiner can check your capability and your skills and your flexibility in using the English language. Why? Because you use a lot of words there and you also use a range of grammar. So it is better to answer that way. Why is it better? It's because of the fact that you were able to produce more words, therefore, telling the examiner that you are flexible in using the English language, in speaking the English language. Always remember that in IELTS speaking part 1, there are around 3 topics that the examiner would give you. And normally, each topic would consist of 2 to 4 questions. Therefore, there are roughly 8 to 10 questions, IELTS speaking questions in part 1, being asked to you by the examiner. So you have 8 to 10 chances to tell the examiner that even if English is not your first language, you are flexible enough to speak English. Now let's proceed to the second part of IELTS speaking. The second part of IELTS speaking is called the individual long turn. The examiner will give you a cue card, and in that cue card is a set of questions. For instance, the cue card is like this. There is a main question, describe your best friend. The main question always starts with describe or the word talk. And after the main question, there are 3 or 4 sub-questions like the following. What is the name of that friend? Where did you meet that friend? When did you become friends? And why are you friends? Basically, the 4 sub-questions are actually just follow-up questions about the main question, describe your best friend. In individual long turn, the examiner will give you 1 minute to prepare your answer. He or she will give you a pen and a paper to write down your notes about the topic. After 1 minute, the examiner will give you 2 minutes to talk about the topic. And within that 2 minutes, the examiner will not talk at all. So within that 2 minutes, that is your chance as well to give your best and talk about what the topic is all about. Now, just like part 1, in which I gave you a pattern or a tip on how to answer, which was answer plus reason, part 2 also has its own pattern as well. The pattern in answering part 2 is this one. You must have an introduction, then a body, which is the answer of all the sub-questions, and a conclusion to tell the examiner that you're already done answering part 2. For the introduction, always remember that you have to catch the attention of the examiner. And by doing so, you must ensure that your introduction in part 2 is good and well thought of. For example, if the main question is describe your best friend, you can make an introduction like this. I have a lot of friends. However, there is one friend that stands out from the rest, and I would like to talk about my best friend, John. Now that is a sample introduction. That is way better than simply saying, I would like to talk about my best friend, John. Again, you only have a limited time to showcase your skills in English speaking. So you have to make sure that you get the attention of the examiner as soon as possible using your introduction. Now, in answering the sub-questions, which would make up our body for part 2, always remember that the questions always started with the WH questions. For instance, who, what, where, when, why, and how. And like what you have learned before, you must answer those WH questions with specific answers. For instance, who is that friend? You have to say the name of that friend, not just simply saying my friend all throughout your answers in part 2. And when you answer the name John as the name of your friend, that is also not enough. You have to remember that the main question, the main verb of the question was describe. Therefore, you have to describe the answer John. Is John handsome? Is John Filipino or perhaps American? Is John same age as you? Therefore, in answering the sub-questions, it is expected of you to make use of the adjectives to describe your answer. Always remember that IELTS is always looking for specific answers. Why? Specific answers are always credible. And when you say credible, it would give an idea to your examiner that your answers are believable. Now let's proceed to part 3. Part 3 is what we call two-way discussion. The questions in part 3 are basically connected to the topic presented in part 2. Now, if you received a cue card in which the topic was all about friendship, then you can expect that the questions for part 3 are also about friendship. For example, are there changes in the pattern of making friends before and now? Or perhaps, what are the advantages and disadvantages of making friends online? These two sample questions that you have heard today are basically different with the questions presented in part 1, correct? Yes, they are different. Part 1 questions are a little bit personal. It talks about you. But for part 3, the questions are a little bit general and it asks for your opinion about something. Therefore, since you cannot hear the word you in the question for part 3, then it is expected of you to provide a general answer. The pattern in answering part 3 is this: answer plus reason plus example. The examples that you can provide are your personal experiences or what's happening in your country or in your culture. Why you should make your example personal. The reason behind is that commonly your examiners are native speakers. They do not live in your country or they are not originally from your country. Therefore, if you're going to provide an answer that is too personal or perhaps contains tradition or culture about your origin, that would make your answer believable. And I am telling you, the examiner will really appreciate that kind of answer. Now let's try to answer this one part 3 question. Is advertising really necessary in modern society? You can answer it this way. Advertising is indeed necessary since it can guide us in what to buy by giving us extra information about the products. As you probably know, there are various brands of a certain product in the market, and choosing which one is better in terms of quality is a tough decision indeed. For instance, when I broke my phone, I searched what phone has the best specs I wanted, and I came across one ad about this certain phone, and that pushed me to buy that phone. Ads are really helpful at times. Now, that's a difference between part 1 and part 3. The answers in part 3 are longer because you have to provide an example. All right, now that is all about IELTS speaking. I hope you learned something today, but if you wish to learn more, you can enroll with us. Study with customized English learning where you can customize the English skills you wanted. Thank you very much, and I hope to hear from you soon. Bye-bye.